Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And in this evening's video, I wanted to discuss in more detail why this is such a big deal that all of the C-band spectrum is now cleared, and what does that mean for you, the consumer, and how is Verizon going to approach this in the short to midterm. So there's a lot of concern around Verizon's consumer business, right? It hasn't been growing. Even in the last quarter that they just posted, they had a positive growth quarter for 8,000. But on the consumer side specifically, they lost 136,000, and they've been losing the past few quarters. So now with all of this new spectrum, this new bandwidth that's on air, Verizon is going to be blazing fast across the entire network. Right? They spent $40+ billion to have this contiguous spectrum in just about all parts of the country. They have 161 megahertz on average. Many suburban and rural counties, they have 180 to 200 megahertz straight contiguous C-band spectrum. No, it's not fragmented. It's all contiguous. So they spent a big chunk of money to get that spectrum. So now what do they do with it, right? Well, for one, they have to deploy it. So that's ongoing throughout this year, next year, and probably well into 2025. They will continue to deploy this on a site-by-site basis. The second big important part was the clearing. That's now 99% behind us. The SES, they finished their C-band clearing. I think there's one other satellite company in the country, I believe, that still needs to repurpose or retune that satellite. And once that's done, then it's literally 100% cleared. And I believe, from what I was told, within the POPs that are deployed now, all of that is cleared. So that other satellite company that still needs to clear, they don't matter at this point in time. They will as they go to 250, 300 million pops covered, but by that time I'm positive that company will have cleared that portion of C-band as well. So now I also want to caution you, the consumer, as well. You have to have a compatible device to get to that 140, 160 megahertz of C-band. So keep that in mind. If you have like an iPhone 11, iPhone 12, iPhone 10, you probably won't be able to take advantage of the bigger portion of C-band. Because now, although it's contiguous, the largest channel that you can put together is 100 megahertz. So they still have to aggregate the B block. So you'll see 100, and then you'll see whatever your market has. If it's 40 or 60 or 80 or 100, you'll see that aggregated in the service menu or field test menu, depending on if you have an Android or a Samsung or an iPhone. So the next wave. So I think, being that Verizon is now really pushing that whole premium network, they really want to do a kill shot, so to speak. They want to come in and they just want to demolish and dominate T-Mobile. That's their goal. They want there to be no doubt that they have the best, most reliable, and fastest 5G network. So the first thing that Verizon is going to try to do, in my opinion, is take back the bragging rights. I think they want to do that very quickly, and I think they do that in the short term. I truly believe this will be the shortest period that we will ever witness the biggest median speed increase in the history of wireless. That's my honest opinion. Well over 50% of Verizon's entire footprint now is on their own fiber. And now with this, biggest part of the C-band clearing, Verizon's going to go to 140, 160. A lot of these markets, they're going to start ripping on speeds. You're going to see a gig, and 1.5, 1.6, 2 gigs. You're going to see all that across the board. Now, due to the fact that devices, the consumer still needs to catch up to newer or upgrade to newer devices to get to that type of speed, could potentially hold Verizon back a little bit. But I just, from a testing perspective, at least RootMetrics, they use the newest devices. So from a scientific perspective, you should see Verizon increase in speeds tremendously over the next several months. RootMetrics is getting started on their second half 2023 testing, and I strongly assume that speeds, the median speeds in these markets that are being tested, are going to increase significantly and very quickly. So the next part to this as well, help the additional bandwidth that's being put on air is important for fixed wireless access. So now they can give the opportunity and access to more households that previously wouldn't have been accepted because most markets were only at 60 megahertz. Some that were part of the first round of early clearing got to 100, but I'm sure there's those additional fixed wireless access slots probably have already been filled up. So now putting an additional 40 to 60 megahertz on air could allow another, 5-10 houses onto the service. It's a strong possibility. So that's something to look at as well. Fixed wireless access, can they accelerate that growth? Like significantly? Can we see them start posting quarters 500, 600,000, or do we have to wait until they get to 250 million, 280 million pops covered with C-band? Do they have to get into that rural territory to get to those types of numbers? I don't think so. I think right now with all of the bandwidth on air and then slapping CBRS onto that, and then CBRS is going to go to NR as well, so that'll be aggregated into the channels. So they'll have a compelling standalone product at some point in time. N13 or Band 13 still has to get certified to be moved over to 5G. So that's probably going to be the last band that they move because they still have such high usage on LTE. So that's going to be a little tricky, them moving over to a standalone core because they don't have a separate low band channel that they can dedicate to 5G. So it might be a while before Verizon actually approaches the whole standalone story. Now, on the mid-band side, they can dedicate, or they have dedicated, all the C-band to 5G. So that's fine. They can keep that off of LTE. LTE will increase in speeds as people move over to 5G anyway. But the whole standalone story is going to be very interesting with Verizon. They don't have N5 nationally. So there's going to be markets where they can't move 850 to NR. A clean channel, meaning it's not reliant on DSS. So that's something that the Verizon will have to figure out how they approach this. They should have been a part of the 600 megahertz auction. If you ask me, they should have gotten a decent chunk in there to move over to standalone right now. They didn't. That's maybe a mistake that they internally admit, that they made a mistake by not participating in the 600 megahertz auction. But again, that's the past. They got to move forward, and now they got to deploy. They got to deploy it smartly, strategically, and they got to see, okay, how do we get to standalone? How many people do we have on LTE? As the usage transitions over the years to 5G, can we eventually refarm Band 13 to NR? That's something that the teams are looking into. I'm sure they already have. They already have a future planning on that. But it's going to be interesting to see how they approach this. So regardless, this is good for competition. C-band is now cleared. Markets every day now. Every day, markets will go to 100, go to 160. I believe in Samsung markets now, they still need an additional software update, I'm told, to get to that B block. So you should start seeing Samsung, at least for now, go from 60 to 100. And then with time, I'll try to get a time frame of ETA. But with additional time, eventually Samsung will also go to 140, 160, depending on what's owned in a given market. So let me know what you think about that in the comment section down below. Again, that's Verizon. That's how they seem to take this approach. They just want to demolish T-Mobile. They don't want any doubt that T-Mobile is still the 5G leader, and that's how they're approaching it. Could there be some bumps in the road? Absolutely, right? The low band situation Will be interesting to see how long does Verizon really have to wait to go to standalone. That's because there's going to be no low band auction for a very long time. So Verizon has to figure that out. They have to figure out how they approach this. Do they become dense enough to where low band doesn't matter? Is that the plan? Who knows? We'll see with time. But one thing they have to figure out now that all of this newfound capacity is on air, they continue building all these sites. They're modernizing sites in Timbuktu, right? They're going to that rural territory now, much larger geographic footprint to cover. They have to start growing the base. For one, with all this bandwidth on air, they have to start growing or accelerating the growth on fixed wireless access. That's just got to happen. Investors are going to look for that, and then they got to bring back the consumer growth. They're the largest base on the postpaid side. They don't have to grow 800,000 ads. They just got to do a comfortable 200 to 300,000, and I think the market will be satisfied with that. So that's something that Hans and the team will have to figure out. I personally think Hans is on his way out. If you look, like very recently, he hasn't been in the media much. He's rarely ever seen again, from what I'm hearing. This last conference, he wasn't a part of it. So we'll see, right? I'm speculating at this point. We'll see what happens with him. But exciting times at Verizon. C-band is scaling every day, and the bandwidth is scaling with it. So make sure you guys stay tuned for more. Like, share, subscribe. I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.